Tears of a Billionaire's Hidden Bride. Chapter 1. The bridal suite should have been filled with laughter, excitement, and joy. Instead, it was filled with silence sharp enough to cut. Amara Blake stood in front of the mirror, dressed in a gown she had spent months choosing. The silk clung to her trembling body, the lace sleeves hugging her thin arms. Her makeup was perfect, but her eyes, they told a different story. Because Nathan Cross, the man she was supposed to marry, the man she had given her whole heart to, was standing on the other side of the room with a look of pure disgust. The bouquet slipped from her hands and fell to the floor with a dull thud. Petals scattered like broken promises. "Nathan," her voice cracked, weak and pleading. "Why are you saying this now? The ceremony is about to start. Everyone is waiting for us." He didn't even meet her eyes. He stood tall, cold, untouchable, his jaw clenched. "The wedding is off, Amara. I won't marry you." Her chest squeezed tight, and she staggered forward as though her body itself couldn't handle the weight of those words. "What do you mean it's off? After everything, after years of..." His lips curved into something cruel. "Did you really think this marriage was ever about love? You're nothing more than a convenience. Your family's fortune kept me afloat when I needed it. You were always temporary." Amara felt the ground shift under her feet. Her stomach twisted painfully, her breaths coming shallow. "Temporary? Nathan, I gave up everything for you. I endured everything just to be by your side. You can't mean this." The door suddenly swung open with a loud slam. Cassandra Gray entered, her crimson dress clinging to every curve. She looked at Amara like a predator staring at prey. The bitter scent of her perfume filled the air, suffocating, overpowering the faint sweetness of Amara's bridal roses. Cassandra smirked, her voice dripping venom. "Oh, Amara, did you really think you'd win against me? That Nathan would ever truly belong to you?" She laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "While you were dreaming of a perfect wedding, he was in my bed. While you wasted your tears on him, he gave his love to me. Every time he left you waiting, he was with me." Amara's vision blurred. Her hands shook so violently she had to clutch her gown just to stay standing. Her chest heaved, every breath scraping her lungs like broken glass. She turned to Nathan, praying for him to deny it, to prove Cassandra wrong. But Nathan didn't deny it. Instead, his gaze softened for Cassandra. He reached for her hand, fingers entwining with hers in front of Amara's tear-streaked face. "Enough, Cassandra. You don't have to explain yourself to her. She's nothing to us now." The way he looked at Cassandra, with tenderness and warmth, was a look he had never once given Amara in all their years together. Not even once. Amara's knees gave out, and she fell against the chair behind her. Her beautiful white dress crumpled, the fabric wrinkling under her trembling weight. She had fought for this love for years. She had endured loneliness, neglect, and humiliation, convincing herself that one day he would see her, truly see her. But today, on what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, he had stripped her down to nothing. Her voice was hoarse as she whispered, Why did you even propose to me if this is how you felt?" Nathan's eyes turned ice-cold again. "Because you were useful. Don't flatter yourself. Now that your family has lost its influence, you're worthless to me. You should thank me for tolerating you this long." The words crushed her like a boulder. She pressed her hand against her chest, trying to hold herself together, but she felt like she was splitting apart piece by piece. Cassandra leaned forward, her smile vicious. "You'll walk away quietly if you know what's good for you, Amara. This city has no place for pathetic, abandoned brides." Amara wanted to scream, to cry, to tear the gown from her body and run. But she couldn't move. She sat frozen, drowning in despair. She thought of the years she had spent by Nathan's side, waiting like a fool. She thought of the nights she sat alone, clutching her phone, praying for his return. She thought of how many times she had told herself that love was worth the pain. And now, she realized she had been nothing but a shadow in his life. Someone he kept on the side until he no longer needed her. Her heart bled, but somewhere deep in the wreckage of her soul, something began to burn. She slowly lifted her head, her eyes red, her voice trembling yet filled with something dangerous. "Nathan, Cassandra, you may laugh now. You may think you've destroyed me. But I swear on everything I have left, you will regret this." Nathan chuckled, a sound filled with contempt. "Regret? I don't know the meaning of the word." Cassandra's mocking laughter followed as Amara rose, unsteady but unbroken, and walked out of the bridal suite. Her tears blurred her vision, but she didn't stop. Each step hurt, each breath was heavy, but she kept moving. They wanted her broken. They thought they had silenced her. But what they didn't know, They had just awakened a woman who had nothing left to lose. Chapter 2. The grand hall that had been decorated for Amara's wedding now looked like a cruel stage. Crystal chandeliers glimmered above, the white flowers lined the aisle, and the guests sat whispering among themselves. But instead of music and joy, the air was thick with mockery. When Amara stepped out of the bridal suite, her veil half torn, her steps uneven, a ripple of gasps and laughter spread through the crowd. "Where's the groom?" someone muttered loudly. "Did he leave her?" another sneered. Imagine being left at the altar, what a disgrace. Each word stabbed her, sharper than any blade. She had dreamed of walking down this aisle since she was a child, her parents long gone, her only wish to one day have a family who wouldn't abandon her. Instead, she now walked under the weight of hundreds of eyes, each one filled with judgment and cruel delight. Her gown, once flawless, felt like chains dragging her down. Her shoes clicked against the marble floor, every sound echoing her humiliation. And then she saw them, Nathan and Cassandra. They were standing at the far end of the hall, hand in hand, their figures lit by the glow of the chandeliers. Cassandra's crimson dress clung to her like fire, her smile mocking as she leaned into Nathan. He didn't push her away. He didn't even try to hide it. The whispers grew louder. "So it's true. Nathan left her for Cassandra. She was a fool to think he'd ever choose her. She looks pitiful." Amara's face burned, but her body felt ice cold. She wanted to scream, to run, to tear off the suffocating gown. But her legs carried her forward, step after step, as though she were walking into her own execution. At the front, Nathan finally spoke. His voice carried through the hall, each word cutting deeper than the last. "This wedding is canceled. Effective immediately." Laughter broke out. Some tried to hide it behind their hands, others didn't bother. Amara stood frozen in place, her heart pounding painfully in her chest. Nathan's eyes met hers for the briefest second, cold, sharp, and merciless. Then he turned to Cassandra, his expression softening. He reached out, brushing her hair back as though Amara weren't even standing there. The sight shattered her. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "Why me? Why always me?" But her voice was swallowed by the crowd. The humiliation didn't end there. Guests began to leave, but not quietly. Some approached her just to gloat. One woman smirked as she passed. "You should have known better than to dream so high. A man like Nathan would never stay with someone like you." Another leaned close, her words like poison. "Do you know what people will call you now? The abandoned bride. You'll never live this down." Amara's hands curled into fists, her nails digging into her palms until she bled, but she didn't cry out. She stood there, her body trembling, her heart broken, as the world around her crumbled. And then Cassandra's voice rang out, loud and clear, mocking her in front of everyone. "Amara," she called sweetly, though her smile was sharp. "Be grateful. Nathan was too kind to you. He gave you years you never deserved. Consider this your freedom." The guests laughed again. Amara staggered back, her vision blurring, her breaths shallow. Her entire life had been ripped apart in one afternoon. She thought of her parents, long gone, and how they weren't here to hold her. She thought of the years she had spent alone, clinging to Nathan because he was the only person she believed would stay. She thought of the countless nights she had waited by the phone, crying silently so no one would know her shame. And now, here she was abandoned, ridiculed, stripped of her dignity in front of everyone. Her sorrow was so heavy it pressed down on her chest, suffocating her, crushing her until she felt like she could hardly breathe. But beneath the sorrow, a spark flickered. A tiny, fragile spark of rage. Her tears dried on her cheeks as she lifted her chin. Her voice shook, but it carried through the hall. "You laugh now. You humiliate me now. But the day will come when your laughter turns into silence. And when it does, you will remember this moment." Her words silenced the hall for a heartbeat. Nathan's face darkened, Cassandra's smile faltered. But the moment passed as quickly as it came. They laughed again, but Amara had already turned, her gown trailing behind her as she walked out of the hall. Each step was agony, but each step also carried her further away from the life that had just burned to ashes. She left with nothing, no love, no family, no pride. But what they didn't know was that in stripping her of everything, they had also set something terrifying free. The kind of strength only... Chapter 3. The sound of her heels clicking against the pavement echoed in the night as Amara staggered out of the hotel, the weight of her ruined gown dragging against the ground. The street lamps burned dimly, their yellow glow reflecting against her tear-streaked face. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though invisible chains were pulling her back to that hall, forcing her to relive the humiliation again and again. The guests' laughter still clung to her ears. Cassandra's mocking voice still stabbed her heart. And Nathan's cold, uncaring eyes haunted her with every breath she took. She reached the curb, her body trembling from exhaustion and grief, when she heard a voice behind her. There she is, the abandoned bride. A group of onlookers had followed her out. Some were strangers, others acquaintances of Nathan's family. None carried sympathy in their eyes. One man smirked cruelly, pulling out his phone. Smile for the camera, sweetheart. You'll be trending by morning. Amara tried to turn away, but the flash of his phone lit up her tear-streaked face, immortalizing her humiliation. She looks pathetic, a woman sneered. Did she really think Nathan would marry her? Look at her, all dolled up for nothing. Laughter broke out, sharp and merciless. Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to keep moving. She didn't respond. She didn't plead. She couldn't give them more to feed on. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She hesitated before looking at the screen. It was a message from an aunt she hadn't spoken to in months. Relief washed over her for a second, until she opened it. Amara, what a disgrace. Do you realize how much shame you've brought on our family? Nathan was your only chance. No man will want you now. Don't come back here. You're on your own. The words blurred through her tears, but the pain was sharp. Even her own blood, the little family she had left, had cast her aside. She was truly alone now. Her hands shook so violently she nearly dropped the phone. A sob tore through her throat, and she stumbled down the street, her body heavy with sorrow. She had nowhere to go. No home waiting for her, no arms ready to hold her. Just endless darkness. By the time she reached a small park, her legs gave out. She sank onto a bench, her gown pooling around her, the lace now stained and torn from the ground. Her veil slipped off and drifted onto the dirt like discarded trash. Amara buried her face in her hands and let the sobs finally escape. The kind that tore through her chest until she couldn't breathe, until her shoulders shook violently, until her throat ached from the force of it. She cried for her parents, who weren't there to protect her. She cried for the girl she used to be, full of hope and dreams. She cried for the years wasted on a man who never loved her. Why? She whispered to the empty night. Why me? Why does everyone leave me? The silence answered back, cruel and unforgiving. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. With trembling fingers, she opened it, praying for a sliver of kindness. Instead, Joanna's name lit the screen. Enjoy your freedom, Amara. Nathan was never yours to begin with. Everyone knows now. Everyone saw how pitiful you looked. Tomorrow, you'll be nothing but gossip in this city. You're finished. Her chest heaved violently, her sobs returning in waves. The world was swallowing her whole. And yet, deep beneath the sorrow, something darker stirred. Hatred. Not just for Nathan and Cassandra, but for herself. For being blind. For being weak. For believing that love was enough to make someone stay. Her grief twisted into something sharper. Her tears slowed, drying on her swollen cheeks as her eyes hardened. If Nathan thought she would disappear quietly, if Cassandra believed she would crawl away in silence, they didn't know her at all. But even as that thought sparked in her, the sorrow weighed heavier. Her body was weak, her soul cracked. She had nothing, no money of her own, no allies, no family to call. Even her dignity had been ripped from her in front of the world. The park grew colder as the night stretched on. Couples passed by, laughing, casting pitying or mocking glances at the woman in a wedding gown sitting broken on a bench. No one stopped. No one asked if she was okay. She was invisible, yet the most visible she had ever been, a public spectacle. Finally, as dawn began to break, Amara lifted her head. Her eyes were red, her face pale, but there was something new etched into her expression, a fragile but growing steel. Her voice was hoarse, almost inaudible, but firm. This isn't the end. I may be nothing to them now, but one day they'll choke on their own laughter. She stood, the ruined gown dragging behind her, her body weak but her spirit clinging to that single spark of defiance. For now, she had nothing but sorrow. But she swore to herself in that moment. Sorrow would not be the last chapter of her story. Chapter 4. The weeks that followed were worse than nightmares. Every day, Amelia woke to the sound of her stepmother's voice barking orders. Her body was frail from lack of food, but that didn't matter to them. Fetch water, Amelia. Scrub the floors, Amelia. Wash the linens. It was endless. She was treated not as a daughter but as a servant, a shadow that everyone could spit upon. Her stepsister Vivian, cruel and heartless, would invent excuses to torment her. Once, while Amelia was cleaning the courtyard, Vivian purposely spilled a jug of milk and screamed. Amelia did it. She wastes everything in this house. Without question, Mrs. Lockwood raised her hand and struck Amelia across the face, the sting burning against her already swollen cheek. Amelia held back her tears, her heart screaming, "Why do they hate me so much? What did I do to deserve this?" Night after night, she would crawl into her small, dark corner in the cold storeroom where she slept. The walls smelled of mold, the wooden floor unforgiving against her bones. She wrapped herself in a torn blanket, shivering as the wind crept in through cracks. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, but she dared not steal food from the kitchen. Once she had tried, just a small piece of bread to quiet her rumbling belly, but Vivian had caught her and raised an uproar. Amelia remembered the punishment vividly, Mrs. Lockwood dragging her out by the hair, calling her a thief and a disgrace, forcing her to kneel for hours in the freezing rain until her lips turned blue. Even her father, the one person who could have defended her, remained silent. He avoided her eyes at dinner, pretending she didn't exist. His cowardice cut deeper than any slap. She would whisper in her heart, "Father, why don't you see me? Why don't you protect me?" But the only reply was silence. His silence was worse than hatred. It was betrayal. One evening, when Amelia was sweeping the grand hall, she overheard a conversation between her stepmother and Vivian. Her heart stopped at the words. "She's nothing but a burden," Mrs. Lockwood hissed. "We should marry her off to Lord Bexley. He's old, but he'll pay handsomely. Once she's gone, no one will ever mention her again." Vivian laughed coldly. "Yes, let her rot in some old man's estate. She doesn't deserve better." Amelia's hands trembled on the broomstick. The thought of being sold like cattle to a man older than her father filled her with terror. She pressed herself against the wall, swallowing the sobs that threatened to escape. Is this all my life will ever be? Slavery, humiliation, and being thrown away? That night she prayed. Not the loud kind of prayer people made in churches, but a broken whisper in the darkness. "God, if you can hear me, please, just one day, let them see I am not worthless. Give me strength, even if it kills me. Don't let this be the end of my story." But dawn came, and with it more cruelty. Vivian spilled ink all over Amelia's only dress and laughed, saying, "Now you'll look even more pitiful." Mrs. Lockwood, instead of scolding Vivian, forced Amelia to attend errands in town wearing the stained, ragged fabric. People stared, whispering and sneering. "The Lockwood girl looks like a beggar." Their mockery pierced Amelia's soul, but she lowered her eyes and endured. She had learned that showing pain only gave her tormentors more pleasure. The humiliation did not end there. One night, as guests filled the Lockwood mansion for a grand banquet, Amelia was ordered to serve food and wine like a maid. Vivian wore a beautiful gown of silk and jewels, smiling as the nobleman praised her beauty. Amelia, in her patched dress and bare feet, was pushed from one end of the hall to the other, carrying trays so heavy her arms shook. When she stumbled, spilling wine across a guest's lap, Vivian gasped dramatically. "Oh dear, how clumsy of her. Forgive my useless sister. She's always been a disgrace." The guests chuckled, some with pity, others with scorn. Amelia's face burned red with shame. She wished the ground would open and swallow her whole. Later that night, as she scrubbed the stained carpet alone, she heard the laughter of the party upstairs. She pressed her forehead against the damp cloth, tears mingling with the water. In that moment, she realized she was invisible to them. Not a daughter, not a sister, not even a person. Just a tool for their convenience, an object for their ridicule. Days turned into months, and Amelia's suffering grew heavier. Yet, deep within her heart, something fierce remained alive. Pain had not broken her spirit, it had sharpened it. With every insult, every slap, every betrayal, she whispered to herself, "One day they will regret. One day, the world will see me, and I will no longer bow to them." But for now, she endured. She endured the fear, the maltreatment, the endless nights of hunger and humiliation. Because that was all she could do, survive. And as the cruel household plotted her downfall, destiny silently began weaving a path that would one day Chapter 5. The days that followed were not days at all. They were punishments stretched into hours, then into weeks. Every corner of the mansion felt like a prison cell to Alara, with walls that seemed to whisper her worthlessness back to her. The house itself was beautiful to any outsider, but for her, It was nothing but a cruel stage for humiliation, where she was forced to play the role of a worthless servant, an unwanted wife, a constant reminder of disappointment. Morning always came with dread. She was the first to rise, the last to sleep. Dawn meant scrubbing floors until her hands blistered, washing clothes until her back ached, and preparing breakfast that she herself was rarely allowed to touch. Her stomach would twist in hunger as she carried trays of food to the long dining table, where the family feasted while she stood in silence, waiting to be dismissed. The rich scent of roasted meat and fresh bread taunted her, but she knew better than to let her eyes linger. If they caught her staring, she would be accused of being greedy, called a beggar in her own home. Ruth, her mother-in-law, always found a new way to cut her down. "A woman like you brings nothing but shame. My son could have had a princess, and instead, he is stuck with this pitiful shadow," she would say, loud enough for everyone to hear. Her words dripped like poison into Alara's ears, reminding her that she was not welcome, that she was nothing but a stain on their pride. Dorian himself was no kinder. When he was home, the air grew heavier. His footsteps in the hallway made her shrink with fear, her heart racing as if her body anticipated punishment even before his voice reached her. He treated her like she was invisible most of the time, but on the days when his anger needed an outlet, she became his target. A wrong look, a plate not placed perfectly, a stitch missed on his shirt. All of it was enough to unleash his fury. Sometimes it was words sharp and degrading. Other times, it was silence so cold it froze her to the bone. And when his temper rose beyond control, it was more than words. Bruises bloomed across her arms and shoulders, hidden beneath long sleeves, so that no outsider would ever guess what happened behind closed doors. She would curl up in bed at night, tears soaking the pillow, praying for morning to come, though morning only meant another cycle of torment. The betrayal of her own family cut even deeper. Not once did they check on her, not once did they defend her. To them, she had been sold, discarded like an object. When she wrote a letter begging for her father's kindness, asking only if she could visit, the reply came back cold and final. "Do not bring disgrace to us again." The words were a blade that tore through her chest. She realized she had no place left in the world. Not in her parents' home, not in her husband's heart, not even in her own reflection. Her days blurred together until one evening, as she was cleaning the grand hall alone, she overheard Ruth and Dorian speaking. She froze when she heard her name. "She is a burden," Ruth hissed. "A curse. Do you not see how people look at us when she walks by? They pity us for being tied to such filth." Dorian's voice was colder than ice. "I know. If it weren't for the contract, I would have thrown her out already. But soon, she'll have no reason left to stay." Alara's heart dropped, the mop slipping from her hands. Their voices echoed in her skull, a curse, filth, no reason to stay. She staggered back into the shadows, her breath trembling. She wanted to scream, to defend herself, but fear strangled her words before they could leave her lips. That night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her chest so heavy it felt like it might crush her from within. Even in her pain, a small part of her still longed for one kind word from Dorian, one moment of gentleness that might prove she wasn't completely unworthy. But every day, her hope grew thinner. Each insult, each blow, each cold glance chipped away at the fragile pieces of her heart. Alara began to move through the house like a ghost, silent and unseen, her eyes hollow, her smile long forgotten. She kept her prayers to herself, whispered late at night when the world slept, asking God if he still saw her, if he still cared, if there was a reason for this suffering. But silence answered her prayers. And in that silence, she felt the crushing weight of despair settle deeper into her soul.